Okay, so this is what your paper should look like from last week. If you didn't get this much finished last week, then I need you to finish that with the pencil first. And then once your paper looks like this, where you have step 1 through 6 with the eye in the center and the pupil in the center, and then a variety of scales that go all the way off the edge of the paper. You should have some small scales, some medium scales, and some large scales. Once you have all that on here, then you're going to need to go get a Sharpie. So a Sharpie is the only thing that you're going to need for today. But if you don't have a Sharpie, you can use a black marker. If you don't have a black marker or a Sharpie, you could use a crayon or a colored pencil that is black. And if you don't have a crayon or a colored pencil that's black, you could always use a pen or just your regular pencil. If you're just using your regular pencil, it's going to be a little bit more tricky, but you can still do it. What we need to get done today is we need to make some of our lines thicker. So I already have from last week when I was adding in the pupil, some of these lines in here are a little bit thicker, but all the rest of the lines are the same thickness. They're all thin lines. What I want to do first is I want to trace I'm going to trace all of my pencil lines. But while I'm doing that, I want to think about which lines do I want to make thicker. It's going to make my artwork look a little bit more interesting if some of the areas are thicker and some of the areas are thinner. So after you trace over all of your pencil lines, then that's what you have to decide. Do I want to make this line a little bit thicker? And the only way that you are going to do that is you just kind of trace over it a few times, and every time you trace over it you get a little bit wider. So see how this line is getting thicker and thicker, and you can see the difference easily because look at this one. This one's a thin line and this one's a thick line. Look how much wider this line is than this one. So I'm going to continue to trace over all of my pencil lines. And if you don't have a Sharpie, you're using something else, but you're going to be tracing over all your pencil lines. And then after you do that, then that's when you can decide which lines are going to be thicker. So I have all my lines traced with a Sharpie, and one of the things that you should remember from blades is that if you're tracing something with a Sharpie and you don't actually trace over it exactly, then there are going to be a few pencil lines that pop out. So if you have some of those pencil lines that are still kind of showing a little bit, you can go through and erase those out. So once the Sharpie is dry, you can erase right over top of it and it's not going to ruin it. So you're going to want to go through and use an eraser just kind of here and there to kind of clean up some of those pencil lines. And then once you have that done, you're going to continue with your Sharpie and make some of those lines thicker. So the only lines that I have that are thicker right now are these ones in here are a little bit thicker, and the one on the top of the eyelid and the one on the bottom of the eyelid. So now once I have that, I'm just gonna go in here and there and just make some of these lines a little bit thicker. So remember what I said, you just trace right beside it and make it a little bit wider. And it doesn't need to be every single line. Actually, you don't want it to be every single line. The more variety you have in your artwork, the more interesting it's going to be. So remember when we did the size of the scales and I said it was important to have a variety of small, medium, and large scales? The same thing is going to be true for your thicker lines. So it's good to have a variety of thin lines and thick lines to make your artwork look more interesting. And that's all you have to do for today. Just go in and make some of these lines a little bit thicker. And then I want you to put this paper somewhere safe until next week. And next week is when I'm going to show you some coloring techniques. Please do not color this project today, because if you color it today, then you're not going to know what the coloring techniques are, and you are going to be graded on the coloring techniques. So make sure that you just stop after you're done with your Sharpie for today and wait to color it until next week.